Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today it is Coach Natalie and I talking through how to transition from a building phase to a fat loss phase successfully. So I think this is I imagine this comes up with your clients quite a bit as well, but it can be kind of a harsh transition. It is a big shift. It can be quite intimidating transitioning from like that building phase to the fat loss phase. And the way we go about it is very important for your success, especially those first few weeks of the fat loss phase. They can be quite difficult or they can go very smoothly. But I find like a lot of times if someone gets off to a rocky start with fat loss, the whole phase is quite a bit rockier. So we want to just set you up for success as easily as possible going into that phase. So really, again, today's episode is just going to be a discussion around this transition between the phases and how to just make this as smooth and easy as possible. But before we get into it, Natalie, anything else you want to throw in there? If not, any personal updates from you?
Excited to get into this topic. It feels extra relevant to me lately because I'm dieting. So I'm living it. So I had a lot to contribute. Because I haven't dieted since like fall, but that was just a nine
Not
week
really
diet.
much of a diet, yeah. Oh, nine
It
weeks, I guess.
it
It's longer
wasn't.
than I thought.
Yeah, it was 9 weeks. Like, I mean, I counted it out. I was like, really? Yeah, okay. But it wasn't that. It wasn't like grueling by any means. It just was what it was, like a little cleanup phase kind of thing. Got the job done, got out. Um, and so it feels a little bit different this time because I'm expecting it to be a little bit longer and a little bit more intense.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so I'm into that. I'm like this is my second week on lower calories. So cardio went up. So I think in the like peak build I was doing like 5 days of cardio at 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then like the very tail end he bumped it up to 25 minutes. I think he was kind of trying to like dovetail everything into like a cut sort
That's
of
a good
thing.
idea, actually. I like that.
Yeah, and so then last week, I mean I did like 1 week on lower calories, which I mean we saw like big drop right off the bat. And then he bumped cardio up again to like 5 times 30 minutes. Not a big deal at all. We're talking like 5 extra minutes per day. So it's like I was already allotting 30 minutes for cardio basically, so not a
Right.
big deal at all. Food stayed the same though. I think he wants to just kind of be aggressive off the rip because he mentioned something on our call last week, I think, where he was like, yeah, like I want to get into refeeding in the next couple weeks kind of thing. It's like I just want to make sure training performance stays high. So it's honestly, I think some more details of that are going to come out through today's discussion, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm up to.
Okay.
And yeah, so far so good. It's not a big deal. My life is sort of set up for this, so the only thing that has really changed is like the macros.
So you don't have extreme diet fatigue yet.
Prep brain, not yet.
Okay. But you've lost a pretty good chunk already, haven't you?
Yeah, like I think I hit my peak build weight like a week before he dropped calories, and that was like
Hmm.
157 or something like that. And then like within the first week, I saw like 150 on the scale. I was like, oh, okay. I
It's a
mean, I want
pretty
to be
big
clear,
drop, dude.
I wasn't holding 157. It's like, I tapped it and then kind of like came back down a little bit. Um, but even so, from like high to low, that's pretty extreme, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, but I dropped like the first week, I dropped like 2.9 pounds. And of
Okay.
course, a lot of that is just like water, glycogen, and also just like tightening some things up, like
Yeah.
better food selection, stuff like that. I'm
Yeah.
sure that's some of it. And then this week, it looks like I'm on target to be down another like couple pounds. But I'm
Nice.
definitely like, it's petering out, like that initial drop. It's like all last week, like every single day was like a new low. I was like, okay, let's go. And then this week, it's just kind of been like holding like 150, 151. I'm
Okay.
kind of expecting a new low like tomorrow, I would say. Tomorrow or the
That's what
next
I'd
day.
expect as well for you.
Yeah, and I'm kind of gauging hunger a little bit too. Like I was pretty hungry like the first week. And then it's automatically it's already settled this week, which I knew it would. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, you just gotta like it always feels a little bit like you're pulling the carpet out from underneath you with that like first cut. You know, it was like he peeled off like 100 grams carbs like right off the bat, and like 5 grams of fat or something like that. So it's always a little bit jarring,
Yeah.
but I knew that that would settle out, and it has. So hunger's already better this week, but like I kind of feel it like ramping up. Like there were a couple mornings this week where I didn't wake up hungry, and then it kind of like checks out a little bit with like, okay, the scale's like sort of holding,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm expecting something in the next couple days, but we'll see. But it's not my problem because I'm doing my part. So he can adjust if we need to.
Very relevant to our conversation today, though, as well. And I'll find, especially as you get deeper into the phase, like those days where hunger is higher, that is typically, granted, you're not just making terrible food choices, but like, hey, we're nailing the
Right.
plan and hunger is higher, typically is when I would expect to see a little bit more of a drop. But also, as you said, like, it's not uncommon for the first week there to be a little bit more hunger. We get used to it and it's all good. I find that like having a little bit of time to prepare for, okay, I'm going to be going into fat loss, it's a lot less so. I don't know how much of that is psychological, but for me at least, it seems like if I'm ready for it versus if it's just like sprung on me, it's like, oh shit, I'm hungry. Versus if I was like, I'm so stoked to diet, then you don't really notice it.
Well, and I think with any, and I mean, this is again so relevant to what we're talking about today, but when you know that a diet phase is coming, you do get the chance to be excited about it and to also just anticipate and expect the hunger. Like,
Right.
okay, like I'm gonna have lowered food. Hunger's probably gonna be up at least for a little while initially. Like it'll settle down. It's fine. But I knew this diet was coming for sure. But I admit, like he did drop me about like a week or two before I thought he would just based on our previous conversations, it was like, oh yeah, like we'll make our move in the next couple weeks. I'm like, cool. And it's like he said, like, quote, next couple weeks, like 1 week prior. So then, 1 week goes by and he's like, all right, dude, I'm pulling food. I was like, okay. So it did catch me just like a little bit off guard, but generally speaking, of course I knew the diet was coming.
Was coming up, yeah. Hmm. Be interested to see if that was different though, regardless. But okay, super relevant to today's conversation. So let's just get into it, starting with common mistakes people make when transitioning from a building phase to a fat loss phase. I want to kick it over to you first. What stands out to you as a major mistake here?
I said not being clear on the goal.
Oh yeah.
Is this a mini cut in terms of either intensity or duration? Is this just like a cleanup phase kind of thing? Are we like in between building? We just want to get right back to building. Are we getting ready for a photo shoot? Are we get like how lean are we looking to get?
Mhm.
Because, if we're just looking to clean things up between builds, that's setting a different expectation, I think, a little bit than like, hey, we want to get you ripped and shredded.
Right.
So I think, just arbitrarily going into fat loss, like what exactly are we trying to accomplish is important. And then tandem to that is like, we need to set a timeline. Now, of course, you and I both will always tell our clients that nothing is ever set in stone. The beauty of individualized coaching is in the adjustments along the way. And of course, we are all human. So like we just have things come up. Maybe, you might get sick or, unanticipated events. But you want to set a general timeline, I think, because that goes hand in hand with setting expectations, as opposed to just like, hey, we're just gonna go drop you into fat loss and see where it goes.
Oh yeah. I think that's huge. I love this one because when there's not a clear goal and a timeline, and again, we're not too married to the timeline. It doesn't necessarily have to be a goal weight, but like we like to establish, like that's why I like the like, hey, give me a pic, like send me some inspiration pictures of like what the goal physique looks like. Can't just give you this person's physique, but it gives me an idea of like how ripped we want to get. Then I can talk through, okay, based on this, I think we need to lose like maybe 15 pounds. Here's how long I think this is going to take. Here's like how hard we'll have to push. We can establish all that very clearly. Whereas when there's not a timeline, especially, people don't act with urgency, I find.
And
And
that's so important, like what you're talking through in terms of like, hey, what's the goal physique? What look are we going for? Because when we're crafting the plan for the client, this goes back to the initial point, which was we have to get clear on the goal. So maybe it's a really quote extreme goal. And I say extreme in terms of where the client is starting from. So the client's starting point. So therefore, this fat loss phase might be like the initial fat loss phase to get you to that point where we need to, okay, now we just need to build,
Right.
right? Versus, so maybe in the grand scheme of timelines, you're probably going to have to do like 2 to 3 rounds of fat loss
Hmm.
throughout a longer period of time.
Right.
Versus, okay, here's your goal physique, here's what you want to look like, one and done. It's
Right.
kind of rarely that.
Absolutely. But again, I think when people don't have like that timeline in mind, and even a more clear goal in mind is just, hey, I want to get leaner. It often turns into it's because that timeline is just kind of infinite. It's so much easier to just give yourself an out with like, oh, well, I don't know if I feel like it today. That's okay. Because there's not like any type, that's what I'm saying by urgency, not that it has to all the time just be like, holy shit, am I following the plan perfectly? But we do need to be very intentional in fat loss. And that is where people end up just perma dieting, where this, you always have this idea, vague idea, I want to get leaner. It's not set in stone. We don't have like a clear game plan or what we're trying to accomplish. It's just like we're always kind of trying to dieting, but never really making any progress because we do get a lot more lax.
Yep.
I would say next, which this is kind of an either way. Cutting too aggressively too soon, depending on what too aggressive is, depends on the person. Because I'm a big fan of with like what you're doing right now, basically, is very similar. You're dieting aggressively. You guys are trying to get a lot done at the start. That's what I did for my fat loss phase too. We pushed it super hard. I lost like 16 pounds in the first, which I guess you're on track to beat me, maybe, but
Yeah.
damn it. I thought I
There's
gotta get back into fat loss on
no
my
way
head.
we're sustaining this. No way.
What's that?
I said there's no way we're sustaining that rate of
No, if
loss.
you guys if you lost 10% of your body weight in 4 weeks, that would be pretty crazy. But I do like that for a more advanced client. We can peel a lot of fat off quickly, but a lot of people get into this more so like gym pop. People have struggled to diet successfully. A lot of times the issue is it's just like I'm taking food as low as I possibly can. I feel like shit. I feel like shit in my training. And we're just not actually able to stick to the plan for more than like 5, 6 days. And that turns into an issue. And again, the more experiences we are, as we're using things like meal plans and other adherence tools that make it easier, it becomes more realistic. So it's not like cutting aggressively at the start is a bad thing, but it just needs to be a good match for the person. But especially when it's hurting the way we're fueling our, and again, like you're not going to be as well fueled during this time, but I guess that really ties into the next point, which would be deprioritizing fueling well around training. Um, Specifically like making sure we're prioritizing a good amount of food, a good amount of carbs pre-workout. I really have I took this from you, but I've loved having actually just I've stopped having a lot of my clients track their intra-workout carbs. This isn't going to be stored as fat. This is just going to help us train harder, train better. We're going to keep
It's
this in no matter what. Yeah, I love it. That's such a good approach, but I've been doing that with like all of my more advanced people because it does make so much sense. And even when we're in the depths of fat loss, like I really just don't think that's going to hurt our fat loss. And it is just going to help so much from a training and recovery perspective. And that our ability to train hard equals our ability to build or very least maintain muscle, which is like the biggest part of, or just as important as the fat loss when it comes to achieving your best physique at the end of the phase. So that's just so important to keep a priority as well. And it's like if we're like, it has been very helpful. Like I have a few clients who I talked through with a lot. Like, hey, I don't want you saving like you're skipping your intra workout carbs so you can have a creamy at the end of the night. Like we're not gonna get the best body composition. And a lot of times it would turn into like, well, I don't want to waste my carbs there. So like us just not tracking that is so helpful in that regard.
But yeah, to your point, that's why some of this works like a more aggressive approach right off the bat can work really well with like a more advanced client because not just like advanced from like a training perspective, like, oh, they're so experienced at the gym, but I mean like someone who has dieted successfully before. They are familiar with feelings of hunger. They have the mental grit and resilience to like still show up to the gym and send it, like regardless of what's happening on the nutrition side of things.
Right.
And that's just something that you can earn with time. So I think, to the casual dieter or the, someone who's newer to this, it's super appealing to hear like, oh, rapid fat loss, or like, oh, I can just like go aggressive right off the bat. Like but if you don't have experience with dieting and managing your nutrition, it's a trap. And I wouldn't recommend it.
That's typically the type of person who rapid fat loss seems to be the worst fit for.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Any other common mistakes that stand out to you?
I said not keeping training intensity high, which kind of goes hand in hand
Huge.
on the training side of things that we're talking about here. But like you've just got to keep showing up and sending it. And you also need to, of course, trust your coach to make the proper training adjustments that you might need as you get deeper into the diet. Again, this depends like what is the intensity and duration of your diet. Um, but there are elements where you're probably not going to feel your absolute best,
Right.
but we usually also don't really see that until a little bit later in the
Right.
diet. So I think, too many people make that mistake of like right off the bat, they're like, oh, well, my training's just not going to be as good. Or like my training's just not as important because I'm managing the calories. And it's like, well, you're right. But like, are we really just going for an all-time scale low, or are we going for your best look?
Yeah, I think that training intensity is so underrated and so misunderstood. We talked
Hmm.
about it again a bit before, but that is so vital because you're keeping your training intensity high, pushing close to failure is basically how we send your body the signal that maintaining or building muscle is important. Worst case, maintaining. And yes, I think that a lot of people have heard this like, well, your training isn't as good in a deficit. And to extrapolate it too far to where like honestly doesn't apply to nearly as many people as you would think. Like if you have a higher body fat, training shouldn't suffer. We have plenty of like body fat stores to run off of the rest of the day. Like your training really shouldn't be suffering all that much. Um, until we get quite lean. That's unless we're doing a terrible job fueling around training, which is important, or hydrating around training. So again, then we're like saving all our calories for the end of the day and neglecting like fueling well around training. I mean, like even in my fat loss phase, I progressed every week until the last 2 weeks. And then that was when I was doing the like super low food cardio twice a day thing. And even then, like I still progressed on a few movements and most of it maintained. But that was at the very end. Like I think people do really, eh, your training shouldn't take a big hit until you get quite lean, unless we're doing a really poor job either managing recovery, which is a big thing as well. Like we do sometimes need to pull volume back if someone's training hard enough. Um, that's again depending on the person, but for more advanced client, that's a little bit more common. But again, if we're managing like our training and recovery and nutrition well, shouldn't be taking a big hit. Cool. Next would be carrying building phase habits. Like you said, like, hey, I just tighten things up a little bit. So just simple things like I'm snacking more. I'm not eating as many meals. I have more snacks. I'm a little bit looser with my tracking, or even your food selection. A lot of times, your food selection is going to be a huge part of this. If you're to the point where, like, I know you had like 10 food increases in the last 10 weeks, it seemed like. So because of that, maybe we were biasing more like cereal was part of it, right? Now, I don't, all right. So, like, I don't know if cereal is now in your food plan or not. If so, it's perfectly fine. But again, if we're like eating just hyper palatable foods that we're trying to eat when we're going to get a lot of food in, especially if you're that person who has to ramp your food up so high that you have to make a lot of food swaps in order to get in because you're full, you probably have a very adaptive metabolism where you're also the person that's probably gonna have to diet more aggressively. So we are gonna really have to bias more satiating options. So keeping those in place and just like trying to treat it exactly like the surplus and expecting the same success just isn't gonna go well.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I like to deter clients from snacking or BLTs because it's just a slippery slope because they're not good habits, right? Because
What do you
when
have
we
against bacon, lettuce, and tomato?
nothing, that sounds delicious, actually. But those just aren't habits that serve us really ever.
Right.
Like, and I mean, I do it too. I mean, I'm human, and I literally am going through this transition right now. And there were times in my building phase where I'd be measuring something out, and I was going for like 140 grams of whatever. And it like, I poured it out and it came out like 142. And I was like, "Ah, close enough, kind of thing. Those are little things like I start to really tighten up in fat loss. I know that sounds super anal, but like I don't want to be here longer than I have to. Like, I'm gonna get it right. And like the reality is like, again, I never got sloppy in my build.
Yeah.
So therefore, I know that like, these little discrepancies on the scale like weren't going to be all that impactful in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So take that for what you will.
No, I agree. I'm the same way in my building phase. Like if I have 42 grams of cream of rice instead of 40 grams of cream of rice, I'm not worried about it. If it's like
Right.
50 or 45 instead of 40, yeah, I'll still probably pull it
For
out. But
sure. For sure.
with like those little deviations, I'm not too concerned about. Fat loss phase, the same thing. Like I'm not gonna notice a difference between 40 and 42 grams of cream of rice when I eat it. But your body does count every calorie. People hate that, but it's true.
Yeah.
Just like I hate how my credit card counts every time I swipe it, even if I don't think it's a big deal, it is. But it's the same thing. And I would, as you said, I don't like fat loss. It's not fun. So I just want to get it over with ASAP. So why not be as accurate as possible?
It's also like such an integrity thing for me as well. It's like I'm supposed to have 40 grams. Like, so I'm gonna have 40 grams. Like, I'm not trying to like see what I can get away with kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent of how you do one thing is how you do everything. And it's like the integrity with which I want to approach like my fat loss phase, my nutrition, is just something that I think kind of carries over to spills over, I should say, to like other facets of life.
I think it carries over a lot to your confidence as a coach. Now, if you approach your coaching as like, hey, dude, just don't worry about it. We're super flexible here. You know, if the way we coach was like a lot more beginner client, and that was like our message, cool. But working with a lot of people who want an advanced result, and I think as a coach, like you don't coach your best, your most confident when you know, like I'm telling them to stop doing this, but this is what I'm doing. Cool. Um, Not going all in. Our final mistake here. What do you have for us there?
So if you are a candidate for building, and you're really just trying to build your best physique, so maybe this is a fat loss phase in between building phases, or maybe you've done the building and you're gonna shred out here, you're working towards like a photo shoot or maybe like trying to get on stage, just go all in, like flip the switch. I would say like it's go time, like don't dick around. All
Don't
the
be a
things that we've
bitch.
yeah, all the things that we've talked through already, just like don't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah, that is huge though. I think that the deciding like makes me think of my client Lisa, who has just crushed it since what I think we started working
Yeah,
together
she
like end of
looks great.
November. She's crushed it. We're 3.5 weeks out from a photo shoot, and it was so basically picked up with her in November, transitioning from another coach, really struggling, just feeling like kind of wandering. And we talked through like, you have so much potential. You can let's do a photo shoot. Like you're fully capable of that. You want to grow as a coach. You want all these things. Why not? We can do this. And I just shared with her like a lot of my like I've been in a very similar place to where she was in the past as a coach myself. I felt like I always kind of struggled with myself to like follow through with the thing, kind of basically just get myself to finish things that I started and committed to. I would like always quit on myself. And there basically I talked through like my experience working with my first coach, doing my first photo shoot prep. I was just so sick of that and I just completely changed. And it's been so cool to see her just like a switch flipped. She's been as consistent, the most consistent. I don't want to say my most consistent because I have a couple of people who are crazy consistent just like her, but like all of y'all are just dialed in, doesn't miss. And it just made wild progress. But it's so cool to see just like how much when you do decide to just go all in, how much you're capable of changing. But I think just in general with coaching that like I'm afraid to go all in because like this is different than what I've done in the past. That just kills people's progress. It is such a beautiful thing when someone is just willing to start with you and just go all in, like, hey, this is different, this is uncomfortable, but I'm good with it. They always get great results. But when someone's like holding on to like, but I don't want to let go of this, I don't want to let go of this, we just don't do nearly as well.
that's always fear-based. Like there's always fear around that. Like we're scared to go all in because what if, you know? I'm
Yeah.
scared to give up my nightly creamy so that I can prioritize my peri-workout nutrition because what if I want it later? And it's like I don't think anyone ever really stops to ask themselves like, yeah, so what if you do want it later? That doesn't mean you have to have it, you know? Or
Great.
like maybe we finish fat loss and you can have it again. You know,
Right.
like I just that's something I've been thinking through a lot lately and like have like mentioned something I think on my stories yesterday. I made it into a post today. Because it's like if we're always just giving ourselves an out, like then we're never really doing the thing.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like we could. We're now we don't hate creamies here. I'm not opposed to creamy. But the attachment and the amount people are willing to give up long-term progress, their ability to fuel well, build muscle, all these things for like, so I don't have to give up the nightly snack, which a lot of times in like in itself is like, hey, we're super hungry because we're hoarding all our calories. And it's like making everything so much worse. It is quite interesting how much people are willing to like trade off in terms of progress for it to not have to give that up. But maybe that's the future episode, probably not. But don't hate creamies. Mindset shifts. What do you got to start off?
I think a lot of what we've talked through can also fall under the realm of mindset.
Hmm.
But to start out, kind of like what we're talking about here, get excited about the new phase.
Yeah.
So if you're someone who loves building muscle, and building was so fun, and it really is, we need to transition that enthusiasm over to fat loss and like how this is just going to be the best thing ever. This is something I always try to do personally. I also try to hype my clients up too when we're switching phases. And we talk about this a lot. There are pros and cons to each and every nutritional phase, of course.
Yeah.
But here we're talking about focusing on the pros. So, like, getting shredded is fun.
Oh, yeah.
That's fun. Like, let's get hype about it. You're gonna spend summer being lean. I mean, if as far as like right now, because it's May, but you know, whenever. Like, you're getting ready to get lean. People love being lean. That's
Yeah.
fun.
It is cool. It's cool to look at yourself, be able to see your physique change so much on the week to week. I
Hmm.
agree. Very
And it's
similar though to just,
so satisfying to follow through on a plan and do the things that you say you're gonna do. And that is like quintessential fat loss. So it's like, you know, the end of every successful day and week, you're like, yep, another one in the bucket.
absolutely. And that like getting shredded won't make you a happier person, more confident person in itself. Well, maybe a little more confident, but you understand what
More
it's not going
muscle.
to. It's not going to change. I wouldn't know on that one, so I can't speak to it. But seeing yourself follow through, like actually doing what you're committed to, kind of what you were saying with integrity, like is it the end of the world if you go over your food? No. But not that I encourage it, but at the same time, like it does, like you telling yourself, I'm gonna nail things 100% and actually doing that, whereas the last 12 times you told yourself that you weren't able to, or you decide like you just following through, like that does so much for you.
It's al
Um
it's almost like you're gamifying it, you
mhm,
know? Like, that's kinda how I look at it. Like, every day, it's like, got all these tick boxes, all these
yeah,
boxes to tick, and it's like it's almost like gamified. Like, "Yep, there's another one, there's another one." Like, it feels so good to, like, do the plan.
absolutely. Big checklist people over here.
Yeah.
Accepting some hunger is super important as well. Uh we don't want you to be hungry. Like we're not going to go out of our way to try to make you as a client hungry. But and this is also going to be relevant to not just how much food you're eating, but also how lean you are. Both are big factors there. But there's going to be some hunger. Hunger kind of being your body's signal. I mean, if we, like it's really related to leptin and things like that, but simplified, hunger being your body's signal that, hey, we're depleting fat stores, our energy stores quickly. If this continues for too long, we're going to starve to death. Let's go find some more food so we don't starve and we can deplete our energy stores. In the past, that would have been a bad thing because people weren't just getting shredded for fun. Now we are just getting shredded for fun. So some hunger we can almost look at as like again, like we don't want you to be ravenous all the time, but it is a good sign like, hey, we're probably in a deficit. We're probably losing some body fat. I think people are oftentimes there's such a fear of being hungry.
Because it's uncomfortable,
It
and
is uncomfortable.
no one likes being uncomfortable, and being hungry is literally sitting in discomfort.
And I think that this is something I've talked through all the time with clients, and it does always seem like it helps quite a lot. Is like once we actually experience it and just take some time to sit with it and examine what it actually feels like, the hunger in itself isn't actually like the actual sensation of hunger isn't that bad. It is a lot of times this like maybe you correlate it to when you did this other diet in the past and it didn't work for you and you were so hungry and you felt like shit. And then like a lot of times it's like I had an experience like that in the past. We also have to be able to detach that, right? We're taking a better approach now. It is going to work well. And the hunger in itself oftentimes just isn't that scary, right? It's like unless you're just getting like you're probably experiencing some hunger that really fucking sucks, right? Like towards the end of your phase. So you might need to be scared, but like unless we're getting just crazy shredded, like there will be a little bit of hunger from time to time, but not that like painful, like, oh my gosh, I'm dead. I can't move. I'm so exhausted and tired type. There's really nothing to be afraid of except for fear itself.
I really like to intellectualize hunger a little bit, in in my own mind, so the conversations I'll have with myself, that I'm preparing myself for are, we're so far from starving to death. That's just not going to happen. So kind of, not denying hunger, like it's there, it's real, you can recognize it, you can shake its hand, say hello to it, but we don't necessarily always need to act on it because our survival is really not at risk here. Like it's gonna be okay. And it's like you're always only what, like 3 or 4 hours away from your next meal, depending on your meal timing schedule, whatever. But it's like the next meal is always right around the corner, and then you get to go to bed, and then you go to sleep, and then you wake up and you get to eat. It's we have to kind of like sometimes play a little bit of mental gymnastics with ourselves, but also just convincing yourself that nothing bad is going to happen if you're hungry.
Again, I think it's a lot of times made into just more of an emergency than it actually is. Like you being hungry isn't typically and I've told clients like, okay, ask yourself, is this an emergency? Like, are you gonna pass out if we don't eat? Can we like if we felt a little hunger pang, like does that immediately that's not like the wow, the tank is on empty and below and like the alarms are going off. It's just like, oh, it's starting to feel a little hunger. I also always think of, I think it was Jeff Sue. I remember seeing him post on his story. It was a conversation with a client, and she was mentioning she was like super hungry and tired. And he's like, "Well, don't worry if you pass out. Somebody will call 911 or something like that." Not that I haven't never told anyone that personally, but it just always cracks me up to think about. I think about it often. What do you got next?
Just accepting some lower energy and maybe some mood shifts as well. So again, a well-run fat loss phase, and this also really depends. It depends on how lean you are, like some of your genetics, honestly. Like some people just like perceive hunger differently, whether that's nature or nurture. I'm not
For sure.
entirely sure. I think combination of both usually. But, not every day is going to be an A plus in terms of how you feel. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything's wrong. We're like food is calories, and calories are a measure of energy, and you are purposely, intentionally consuming less energy than your body needs.
Right.
So it's understandable that we might not be feeling A plus every single day, and that's okay.
Yeah. I don't know if I have anything else to add there. The fat and flat stage. So most of us will experience a time when I would say is typically like the first third to half of your diet where you aren't that lean yet. So we don't see like striations, new definition. You don't like look shredded yet. Also, I stole the fat and flat stage from this name from Coach Baxter. Shout out to Coach Baxter. Um, we don't look shredded yet, but also you do look like more flat. Your muscles are more flat. You're more depleted. So as a whole, you just look smaller and like a little bit more skinny fat than you were before. That is where a lot of people will quit the diet because it's like, I've been grinding and I just look worse, not better. Typically, you have to get through like about 3 to 4 weeks of that in my experience. And then suddenly we kind of break through and it's like, oh wow, I look good. My physique looks a lot better. I'm starting to see like these shreds and starting to see abs or whatever. But you have to be willing to get through the fat and flat stage first. But most of us will experience that unless you have a lot of muscle tissue. You probably personally won't have a fat and flat stage, I would say. I feel like you started this diet lean enough that I don't think that'll probably be an issue, but
No, but I'm gonna get super depleted. Like it's just not gonna look good. Like it's not. But I think the cool thing is when you start getting into like refeeds and you start seeing like signs of life, you're like, oh, you catch a glimpse of like, oh thank God. Like
oh
um
yeah.
but the whole point is to get depleted.
Yeah.
So it's I always like to say too, if you're like doing a really long diet, I remember experiencing this when I did my photo shoot prep with you a few years ago. Like you hit this, if you're doing a longer diet and you're like planning to get pretty lean, you kind of hit this point where you are like, yeah, like you're really feeling yourself and it's like, I look really good. And then you keep pushing and you sort of like round that corner when you're like, yeah, this like doesn't look good.
This is
You
gone. I
know,
look too,
like
yeah. Oh yes.
your face starts to look a little bit like drawn out, like Skeletor kind of thing. Like I just remember like I remember going through a point because that's the last time I pushed a diet,
Hmm.
like 3 years
No.
ago, something like that. And I just remember there was one point where I was like, yeah, all my clothes like feel great, like this is great. And then I pushed to the point where like my all my clothes were too big, but like not in a good way. Like nothing looked good. And I know that can sound really annoying to someone listening, like, oh, like I got so lean that my clothes didn't fit. Yeah, yeah, but like
You
if you
skinny
if you
bitch.
yeah, if you push that hard for that long, you do kind of reach this point where like, yeah, and now it doesn't look very good. But that was also the point for what we were doing at the time. So
Yeah, yeah.
that wasn't just like a summer shred kind of thing. I was like pushing for a photo shoot.
You will fit in your clothes a lot differently. I was also talking to Lisa about this because she shared some picture and I could tell just like all of her clothes were super loose on her. And I was like, it looks like we're getting close to the photo shoot. I can by how your clothes are fitting. I look back at like the pictures from when I did my photo shoot with Brandon DeCruz, like the week after, because I have so many because we got engaged like 2 days after that. I'm like, oh my God, I was tiny. It's crazy to see. Um, yeah, there definitely comes a point where you look shredded if you aren't wearing a lot, but in clothes you can just look tiny as well. Um, Accepting social trade-offs. Anything, was that your point or mine?
It's fine.
Take it away.
I should have color coded. Sorry.
This is so good.
Well, I think you could speak on this just as well, but we talk about this all the time, like not going out to eat as much. You know, your social life might need to change a little bit. How you socialize with other people, maybe it doesn't need to be so food centric.
Yeah.
Which kind of I'm just gonna tack on the next point, which is learning to find enjoyment and entertainment and dopamine outside of food and going out to eat and drinking. Those two things go hand in hand. I always like to say this is something I actually really enjoy about fat loss because it is so easy in today's society to, you know, everything is just so food centric.
Yeah.
And like I do it, you know, as someone who like, you know, basically spent the last like 2+ years like building with a lot of food flexibility. You know, I managed that very well, but I still like really look forward to that meal I was gonna have out that weekend, or
For
you know,
sure.
like I got really into baking, so like the baking project that I was doing, I was really looking forward to that, and I'm of course part of that is like the actual activity of baking, but you know what I mean. It's like always kind of like looking forward to something like food related, and I always look at fat
Yeah.
loss as like an opportunity to explore things and connect with things outside of food, and kind of like, I just don't like the idea that I am dependent on anything. I get like that with caffeine
I
too. If I
know.
start feeling
I know,
I'm
Natalie.
addicted, like, well, you know, I don't like feeling
Just kidding.
like I don't like feeling like something else has control over me. So I always kind of look at these, and this again goes with the mindset shift of like, making the best out of fat loss, going all in, like what are the pros as opposed to the cons. It's like, well, I get to, kind of reevaluate my relationship with food. Like, am I still able to be social? Am I still able to enjoy my life? Or like,
Right.
was food such a big part of my life that I'm just gonna sit around being miserable? Because I hope not.
Yeah. No, I think that is very important. Basically, fat loss isn't the time to live your best life with food.
Yeah.
The more aggressive we are dieting, the more that is true. I was talking with a client about this the other day where I was like, hey, because we've been talking through, like, we've been dieting her quite aggressively and it's been going well. Kind of hit a stall. And there was like something like, well, like the like dating scene and things like that. And it's like, I get it. If you want more flexibility, that's cool, but we need to like get out of aggressive fat loss and like just pull things back a bit if that's the case, because I don't want to like run you into the ground 6 days a week and we undo it in one day of the week. So I think it's very important. Anything else on mindset shifts you wanted to mention before we move on?
Think we touched on this in one of our earlier points, but I just wrote like turning the dial up on everything. So turning everything up to 11. So kind of the example we were using when like you're measuring out your cream of rice and it calls for 40 grams and it's like, oh, whatever, like 42, not a big deal. Like, no, like we need to treat it like it is a big deal here. And like, just tightening things up, like your nighttime routine, your setting your alarm in the morning, your meal timing, your nutrient quality, your time management, and really just your precision. Um, this is a big swap that I've made in the last couple of weeks. I'm already a very like regimented, structured person, so that's fine. But I've just like really tightened it up. Like before, I was doing like 15 minutes of cardio a day. That's like you could waste 15 minutes scrolling your phone in a blink, in a blink
Yeah,
of an eye. Like it goes by so fast. But like 30 minutes, okay, like that's now a little bit more time. It does add up. So I've just gotten like really strict. Like I wake up very naturally, like very early, like between 4 and 5. And so I didn't really set an alarm for a while because I just didn't need to.
right.
But now it's like I'm not taking that chance. Like I'm setting my alarm because my day is really structured. Like I need to hit my meals like honestly within the half hour or like hunger's gonna get away from me. So things like that, just like turning it up a notch.
One thing I love about fat loss is it does typically require you to be more structured and you do, I always feel I'm so productive.
Yeah.
And I do feel every building phase is carried over more and more, like more of those habits. Like, okay, I could just be like this all the time. But I do love that, like, wow, I'm taking on a lot more. I have to do the cardio, I have to do all these things. I'm gonna have to step this up, and it's a good feeling. All right, practical advice. Where do you want to start off here?
Just the basics with, making sure that your meals are set up for like how many meals a day are you having? Like roughly consisting of what? Like you if this is you, I hope that you already kind of have this in order. But, with a calorie kind of cut, are we reducing our number of meals, from 5 meals a day to four? Like, what does that look like on like with your work schedule, with your gym schedule? So we need to get organized there.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things you could do is, okay, I'm starting fat loss. Either a coach gives you just macros, or, which I mean, we never do, but hypothetically, if your coach just gave you macros, or you are just setting them yourself, the worst thing you could do is go into the first day of fat loss, like, okay, we'll see how this works out today. Like, we need a plan. Be it, hey, you plan the day in MyFitnessPal or Chronometer, rather. You have a meal plan, something of the sort, but go into it with a plan. We already go ahead.
Yeah, next, and again, I think these kind of run into each other nicely, but next we need to clean up food selection where needed. So I like to say get rid of the bells and whistles. So what are the kind of fun things that you may have had in your building plan that don't really have a place in fat loss? So maybe that's like cereal. Um, but like this also goes hand in hand with like transitioning kitchen items. This is like something that has been on my mind because again, like my coach kind of pulled the trigger on me like a week before I thought he would. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh shit, like I have like all this stuff in my fridge." And so like last week I was working on like transitioning foods out. Where I was
Natalie's side note hates wasting food.
I hate wasting food. I hate it. And I won't do it.
Or bring
Um,
me like when you guys come for the team meetup and you bring me like a liter of diet root beer with like
Actually, no, no,
a
no.
fourth of a cup left. I'm like, thank you for bringing this to me so I can throw it away.
Okay, first of all, that was both mine and Andrea's idea because we thought it was hilarious.
Okay.
That was just because, yeah, we wanted to get at you for that.
Okay. Well, God at
But
me, you did.
I
I've been
do hate
going.
wasting. I do hate wasting food.
I
So
know.
there definitely have been some things like in the last week that I've like put in my meal plan that I don't plan on keeping there. Like I finished like I had like pretzels, for example, which by the way, underrated carb source. Because they're like low fat, it's just carb, and you can get like
Oh,
saturated.
pretzels slap, dude. Yeah, I
Oh,
agree.
I've been having them on Greek yogurt. They're so good. But like,
Hmm.
there is going to come a point, probably very soon, where I don't have room for those. They're like, that's just not the best idea. So it's like, I made it a point to like finish them out and get them out of the kitchen. And then also from like a kind of temptation standpoint as well, like I just don't want snack food just hanging out in my kitchen. Even those
Yeah.
like non-perishable items that will last like a year, it's like, oh, well, this will be here after my fat loss. Like, I'm just trying to do myself a solid and set up my environment for success.
I think that's huge. No matter what, I think most of us overestimate the amount of willpower we have and underestimate how important our environment is. Talked about that with that brownie you made me, which was delicious. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just gonna
um,
have a bite of this, and the whole thing was gone. It's so easy to setting your
yeah,
environment up is huge.
yes. And along with that, I like to kind of coach clients through like reduce, and I do this myself. I did this back in the fall and it was really effective, like reducing the hyper palatability of my foods. So where I would normally have like Greek yogurt with like almond butter or like almond butter on my oatmeal, like I know this sounds super anal, but like swap it out to just like almonds in their like whole unprocessed sense. Because like, number one, there might come a point where I'm way tempted to overeat almond butter,
Yeah.
like out of the jar, if it gets bad enough. So number one, I don't want it in my house, but number two, like again, if we're trying to do things at a very high level, it is worth mentioning that, in this example, almonds are harder to digest because there's less processing versus almond butter. So if we're trying to leverage everything we can, like the thermic effect of food, um, those little things, maybe not in just in that one example, but like a whole day's worth times 7 days per week times how many weeks you're in fat loss, like things like that could potentially add up. But also
Yeah.
some of the research out there on cravings and like Brandon DeCruz, shout out, did a wonderful podcast episode on the science of cravings, and it was really interesting, and he was presenting like all the research to back this up and was saying that the best way to deal with cravings is to starve them. So basically the more you continue to eat something, the more you're creating a craving for
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And I did this in my last like little kind of cleanup phase last fall, and it was like it's really true, like your palate does settle to it adapts to what you give it. And so this is kind of in line with everything we're talking about here, like transitioning your diet, getting rid of some hyperpalatable foods, getting it out of your kitchen, like your palate will adapt to what you give
Yeah.
it. So if you take like I'd rather just take those things out than tell myself like, oh, I'm gonna have like 2 Oreos per day. It's like how much how much satisfaction am I truly going to get from 2 Oreos per day? Realistically, I'm gonna want more. So it's gonna taste really
Yeah.
good. It's gonna be over really fast, and I'm gonna be left wanting more. So
Oh yeah.
is that the net result that I want from that experience? And like I just would prefer not. I'd prefer not to have it personally.
Yeah. In general, the more processed food is going to be, the more palatable it's going to be. Um, and I agree. I think cravings almost people kind of look at as hunger, similar to
Yep.
hunger, whereas like it's an emergency or like,
Right.
hey, I'm having this craving. What do I need to do to fix it? And oftentimes it's nothing. Like again, it's just like we don't look at cravings for like a nicer car or a nicer house or like nicer friends who don't call you small as like emergencies. We just look at them as like, cool, that'd be nice, but I can't have it right now. And it's kind of the same way with food.
Yeah. there's life on the other side of fat loss. And like you're gonna be able to have the Oreos again. Like it's okay. It's not an
Yeah,
emergency, like you say. Um, and again, I think not everyone, but there are people who do need to develop and cultivate the skill of telling themselves no or delaying that gratification. Like not every want and whim is an emergency.
very well put. Anything else as far as practical advice? These are all your bullet points, so I'm just putting them all your way.
Um, I will try to. We're coming up on time, so I'll try to like get through some of these. Um, as you prepare to kind of make this transition, you want to think about making those fat loss friendly swaps in your nutrition. So like again, easy peasy. So maybe we were rocking like some 93.7 beef before. Okay, cool. Maybe we can transition that to 96 now, or like from beef to chicken or something like that. So again, no need to reinvent the wheel. What are some very simple swaps that we can make? Um, I thought this was a big one. Make room in your life for cardio and steps and be prepared for adjustments. So this is something that I started to do like 2 years ago. I had a gym friend ask me the other day, he's like, why do you do your cardio in the morning? Because it's like very bodybuilding to do your cardio post training. And yes, with
Hmm.
training being the priority, sure. And I was like, because I know there's going to come a time that my coach is going to ask me to do fasted cardio in the
Right,
morning. And I also know that there's a very real possibility, maybe not for everyone, but I know for me there's a very real possibility I might be doing 2 a day cardios. So one's going to have to happen in the morning.
right,
So like I when I started doing cardio, I put it in the morning because I knew this was coming.
right,
So like I'm again, so there was no transition there. That's been my morning for the longest time. And now I have the capacity in my life and in my schedule for that to titrate up as needed. And if it titrates down, which it will at some point, cool. Now I get more time back. And that goes hand in hand with the way that you're preparing your foods as well. So be ready for adjustments because they'll happen more frequently in fat loss than they will in a build or at maintenance. So I know all of us always recommend prepping single ingredient foods. So I have never been one personally to do like the meal container of like, oh, my whole meal is like times
yeah,
7 or whatever. I also get to work from home, so I can throw things together like as needed. And I understand that some people, the way that their jobs and lives are structured, this might be different, but fat loss in particular, big, big, big fan of keeping your ingredients single because you need to be ready to be flexible for adjustments. Like I said, they're going to be happening more frequently, chances are, than it would in a build or a maintenance phase. So when coach decreases carbs by 30 grams a day, but your meals are already prepped and it's all mixed together, it's like, so like just get yourself ready to like be prepared to be flexible. Um, Oh, I also said don't buy, depending on how lean you're looking to get and for what, don't buy new clothes for your leanest physique if you don't plan on maintaining it. Yes, it is important. And then likewise, don't get rid of your building clothes because if you're someone who is like all about this life, you're probably at some point, even if you're gonna like maintain, I want to maintain my like shredded look for a summer or something like that. At some point, you're probably gonna go back to building. So I thought that was
yeah.
a good practical tip.
And again, depending on like what I would say, like the more advanced you are, the more true that is, right? If you're going through like your first fat loss journey and it's like, wow, I lost 30, 40 pounds and I'm down to lifestyle lean now, hopefully we're good to get rid of those clothes, right?
Yeah.
But
If
again,
we're
like,
at where we need to lose body fat, like, and that is like the goal kind of thing,
yeah,
that is different.
right. But when we're phasing through these cycles of building and losing, that's like, I feel like I have like, when I did that, like my fat loss phase with Brandon and Cruz, I was down to mediums, which was like the first time I've worn mediums in so long. At the end of my last building phase, I was in double XLs. It's a pretty that's a pretty big swing between. I had to buy a lot of clothes during that time, honestly. Um, Not a good time, but all incredible points. I don't know if I have anything else to add, but I think this is a really good primer on kind of setting yourself up for success when we are transitioning between phases. Really just important things to think about. A lot of mindset stuff. And again, just from a habits perspective, making sure we're prepared ahead. Like, how can we make sure this transition is as smooth as possible? Any final thoughts from you before we wrap it up?
Um, I did want to add one point because I know the social aspect is huge. Take initiative with your family and friends. So, like with family dinners, meals out, take initiative. Like, take the lead. Suggest places that work for you. Um, you don't expect your goals to be their goals, but I mean, you could probably find a place that's like a steakhouse, for example, that makes everyone happy. But like, take ownership. Don't wait for someone to come back and be like, "Yeah, let's do like hot pot,"
Yeah.
which is like or Korean
Or get your
barbecue, which is
whole
like impossible to track.
or get your whole family shredded and do a group photo shoot would also be cool.
It would be. That's
Either
what we're doing.
or. That would be
My
sick, honestly.
parents.
That would be incredible. Anyways, let's wrap it up there. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, this was helpful. If you enjoy the show, do us a huge favor. Leave us a 5-star rating, leave us a review. Really does help us reach more people with the show. If you want to apply for coaching with our team, hit the link in the show notes, and we will catch you guys next time.